I am going to start by reading a passage to you, which will take about 1.5 of my 10 minutes, but I think it frames everything else I want to say, and in some ways it frames everything else that is said in this entire forum and much of what the Teagle Foundation does. It's a passage from Frederick Douglass's autobiography, his first autobiography, the narrative of the life of an American slave. Douglass was born in a slave in a plantation in Maryland, and when he was 8 years old, he was sent to Baltimore to live with the family of his owner's brother. Very soon after I went to live with Mr. and Mrs. Auld, she very kindly commenced to teach me the ABC. After I had learned this, she assisted me in learning to spell words of 3 or 4 letters. Just at this point of my progress, Mr. Auld found out what was going on and at once forbade Mrs. Auld to instruct me, telling her, among other things, that it was unlawful as well as unsafe to teach a slave to read. To use his own words further, he said, learning how to read would forever unfit him to be a slave. He would at once become unmanageable and of no value to his master. As to himself, it could do him no good, but a great deal of harm. It would make him discontented and unhappy. Douglass says, these words sank deep into my heart. It was a new and special revelation. I now understood what had been to me a most perplexing difficulty, to wit, the white man's power to enslave the black man. From that moment, I understood the pathway from slavery to freedom. Whilst I was saddened at the thought of losing the aid of my kind mistress, I was gladdened by the invaluable instruction which I had gained from my master. Though conscious of the difficulty of learning without a teacher, I set out with high hope and a fixed purpose, at whatever cost, to learn to read. The task that we are engaged with is directly connected to this sentiment. You know, there's no legal slavery anymore in this country, at least, but there are many forms of coercion, of economic compulsion, of lack of freedom that restrict and confine and determine the life of the kinds of students that in the Freedom and Citizenship Program, the program that I'm associated with and which Teagle has generally funded, we teach. We bring 45 students every year, high school students, to the Columbia campus. They are from low-income families and the first in their families to attend college. What we have discovered is that our high schools and this population of low-income students who are the first in their families who hope to go to college, that population is full of little Frederick Douglasses. That population is full of little Abu Bakr Khans of the kinds that Ibu Patel talked about. And what they lack is a pathway from that kind of slavery in which the social forces in which they are caught is leading them to freedom. And that path to slavery is a liberal education. That path out of slavery, is the same path that Frederick Douglass trod. So we bring the students to campus, 45 of them. When we started 10 years ago, we started with 15. We've grown over the years. The program has a couple of kind of characteristics. One of them is very heavy faculty involvement. Not only the leaders of the seminars which they take seminars in small groups of 15. So with 45 students, we have 3 seminars. I teach one of them, and 2 other colleagues teach the other 2. Columbia faculty come and speak to them on a regular basis. Eric Foner, Andy Del Banco, Casey Blake, Kathy Eden, and give students a taste of what it's like to read these old texts in a way that illuminates their lives and illuminates contemporary reality. Mentorship is central to our program. The residential experience is central to the program. What they read, about which I want to talk in a second, is central to the program, the material that they encounter, and our emphasis on civic engagement. I want to just go a little deeper on 2 of these characteristics of the program. The first one is mentorship. These students come obviously from families who didn't go to college. And they, for the most part, attend high schools where there is no meaningful college guidance. And I have a vivid sense of what that's like. I myself went to a New York City public school as an immigrant, learning English. And my experience there was simply of not being seen, simply of going through the institution as a kind of ghost. And there were a lot of kids like me, interested in ideas, but fundamentally invisible. And I remember some of them, and some of them did not fare as well as I have. But there was a teacher, a social studies teacher, who took an interest in me. He was the only person who read my college admissions essay. He was the person who recommended me to college. He was the person who suggested that I apply to Columbia. I did get into Columbia and attended Columbia, and it opened up a world that I or my family or anyone I had ever met could have dreamed of. That is how you take one of those students from high school, from a situation of deprivation and lack of access to resources, to a college. You hold them by the hand with close mentorship and guidance while they make that key transition. Um, that's what we try to do in the program. We surround them with adult attention like they've never had before. We create a culture for them in which thoughtfulness, articulate argumentation, civic engagement, clear expression are valued. We, after that summer between their junior and senior year, we have a year-long civic engagement program with a full semester strongly focused on college application. Over the 10 years that we've been doing the program, we've had nearly 100% of our students enroll and attend college and graduate from college. In the classroom, they discover that I'm actually interested in what they have to say. I am not there just to stuff their head with knowledge about ancient philosophers and ancient thinkers. I want to know what they have to say, and what I am presenting to them in their reading is meaningful in the context of their own experience and engagement with it. This does something to them. This has a transformative impact in the way that they see themselves and the way that they understand their capacities, the way that they can see themselves in college. Let me say another word about what they read, the contents of what we study. What they read and what they study matters. We take our cue from the Columbia Core Curriculum, and the idea of the Columbia Core Curriculum is quite simple and straightforward. It's to put students in direct contact with the most important texts and the most compelling expressions of our humanity that we know. We don't fall into a trap of thinking that these students, because they are from low-income backgrounds and not from families that have attended college, can only relate to material in which they quote-unquote see themselves. Material in which, this being America, we tend to think in racial categories and cultural categories. So materials in which they can see if they're an immigrant, the immigrant experience. If they are a Latino student, a Latino text. I want to insist that imagining that this is the only way that they can connect to great ideas and great text is a form of condescension and paternalism. It is a form of what somebody who is not known for his wordsmith and craft, George W. Bush, called the soft bigotry of low expectations. We read Plato, we read Aristotle, we read Thucydides, we read Hobbes, we read Locke, we read Rousseau, we read Jefferson, we read Douglass, we read Lincoln, we read Martin Luther King, we read John Dewey, we read Milton Friedman, we read Martha Nussbaum. This is all in the space of 3 weeks. This, again, has a profound and transformative impact on them, that these ideas and these figures are not alien and superior, but people who have ideas and issues that matter to them and with which they can engage. You can't imagine what it means for one of the students to say disagree with Aristotle or agree with Plato. It has a profound effect on them. And then one student wrote in their one of the supplemental college applications essays, and then she sent it to me, a student named Vivi. I want to read to you what she wrote in this supplemental essay. She talked about the experience of the program. And then all of these philosophers are inheritors of a shared philosophical history, and I am part of it as well. Strangely, I feel a kinship with these men because they all came from different places but managed to link together with mutual ideas. Diversity of thought is what propels society, and diversity of thought is what changes the world. I believe that being truly diverse does not only stem from cultural values, geography, or traditions, but by mindset. This is the kind of diversity I am aiming for. We're talking about a liberal education, an education where students can come to understand their humanity not as a function of their politics, but to develop a politics that is informed by their broad sense of humanity. We are talking about an education that is liberal in that it liberates the student from the bondage of habit and custom, that opens up the world for them. And there is an urgency to this question because we are, and Andy gave us a list of some of the seemingly intractable problems that we are faced with: growing inequality and our inability to speak across political divide, the challenges of environmental devastation and global climate change that we're in the middle of. We can't solve these problems from our classrooms, but we can cultivate problem-solving minds. Take one of our students, his name is Sean. He was in our first class in 2009. Then he got into Columbia, and he ended up going to school at Columbia, so I kept close tabs on him since he was at Columbia. When he was a junior, I was walking out of the subway station, 157th Street, where I used to live, and I hear somebody calling after me, Professor Montás, Professor Montás. I turn around, it's Sean. And Sean has with him Mark Levine, who was at the moment running for city council. Sean was his deputy campaign director. Sean was hiring staff, managing a budget, and in charge of the get out the vote operation on election day. Mark Levine ended up winning that election. Sean then went to law school and is now a practicing attorney working, representing low-income tenants. Not only that, Sean has now launched a campaign to run for city council and is running for the seat that Mark Levine is vacating because he's term limited. It'd be very nice if Sean wins that city council seat. It represents the district that Columbia sits in, so that our freedom and citizenship students at Columbia will be in a city council district of an alum. But it would also be nice because you would know that there is somebody occupying that city council seat and doing the complex job of a legislator who has a sense of historical depth and of the nuance of difficult problems. Okay, thank you.